Okay, we can begin the proceedings here. I'm Congressman Luke Meyer, sitting in for Congressman Graves this afternoon, and I'm glad that we had such a large participation by the committee today. But we're glad everybody else is here today, and with that, opening statement would begin. Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. Today we're holding the second of two oversight hearings this year to examine the changes made in the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2012 to both the Small Business Innovation Research, or SBIR, and Small Business Technology Transfer, or STTR, programs. Our first hearing focused on private sector impressions of those changes. Today we will focus on what the agencies have been doing to implement the modifications we made in 2012 to these programs. Innovation is the engine that drives our economy. Technological breakthroughs and the entrepreneurship it spurs build our economy by finding state-of-the-art solutions to difficult problems and marketing those through new products. This correlation is particularly important in the small business arena. Small businesses tend to be more nimble, responding to the market changes more rapidly than their bigger counterparts, and they drive the innovation sector and make us more agile in the global economy. It is that recognition of the ingenuity of small firms that led to Congress to establish the SBIR program in 1982. It is also the recognition that has led to its subsequent reauthorizations, the last of which was signed into law 31 months ago. This program, which sets aside a portion of federal research and development dollars for small businesses, is critical for both the small firms that use the grants and the federal agencies that seek innovative solutions to the problems they encounter. Whether it is a new software system for tracking contract payments, a new medical device to help with Parkinson's treatment, or a new piece of technology that helps save lives on the battlefield, the SBIR program has consistently delivered results across all agencies. Primary goals of the most recent and bipartisan legislation were to increase commercialization of SBIR-funded research, promote greater participation from a wider array of small businesses, and to increase the end use of the technology developed through the SBIR program by federal agencies. Today we have some folks who are most responsible for implementing the changes we wrote into law. I'm eager to hear from them on their progress and to hear their impressions of the health of their SBIR and STTR programs. Again, thank you all for being here. I yield to Ms. Vasquez for opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the past 30 years, the SBIR and STTR programs have helped fund nearly $40 billion in innovations across a wide range of sectors. New drug therapies, homeland security technologies, and energy-saving devices are just a few of the benefits that have resulted from this program. These advances have also brought economic development and job creation, demonstrating the synergy that can form between small businesses and the government. Over the years, these initiatives have been regularly reauthorized by Congress. The last effort resulted in several key changes. Among the most significant was a greater focus on ensuring that these programs produce products that are marketable in the private sector or to government agencies themselves. This is an important goal because the program's intent was never to fund Phase 1 research over and over, but rather to generate innovations that will fuel the economy and create jobs. With this in mind, I am specifically interested in understanding how agencies are implementing the reauthorization's commercialization provisions and if they are in fact resulting in more successful endeavors. In a similar context, benchmarks have been established to track those companies that continually win Phase 1 awards without progressing to Phase 2. I look forward to examining agencies' experience with this, especially instances where companies have been made ineligible due to a lack of transitional success. Another notable change was the significant increase in the agency set aside for both SBIR and STTR. This has left agencies with hundreds of millions of dollars more to spend on awards. However, some have reported declining applications, which means fewer companies competing for a larger pot of money. Some have suggested that the set-aside was raised too quickly and that the overall competitiveness of the program is now at risk. Today, I hope to get honest feedback from the agencies on this topic. Finally, there continue to be several ongoing concerns with the program's operation. Agencies' awards remain concentrated in California and Massachusetts, who together receive 35% of the total funds from these programs. Altogether, the top 10 states receive 70%. This is often driven in part by agencies awarding the same companies year after year the most awards. It is unclear why new firms are unable to break into this small group of dominant SBIR, STTR awardees. Similarly, the participation of women-owned and minority-owned firms has been declining. Women-owned firms' share of SBIR awards decreased 35% in the last 17 years. In the same period, awards for minority-owned firms fell by 70%. Overall, according to data on SBIR.gov, last year women-owned firms won 6.4% of SBIR awards, while minority-owned firms won just 2.6%. When it comes to geography and demographics, it is important that the SBIR and STTR are serving the entire country and are not becoming a regular source of income for the same companies. At their core, SBIR and STTR are drivers of innovation. In order to be successful, however, we cannot have a program that primarily serves a select few. During today's hearing, I hope that we can examine these matters. Evaluating what is working and what is not is crucial because before we know it, we will be marking up the next reauthorization for this program. Since their establishment, SBIR and STTR have played an important function in driving the development of cutting-edge technologies. Given the sizable investment that we continue to make in them, it is important that we regularly oversee this program. For that reason, I thank all the witnesses for being here today and the chairman for calling this hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. Just briefly if committee members have an opening statement prepared, I ask that it's submitted for the record. Also like to take a moment to explain the lighting system in front of you. Green means go. Get to the yellow, you got about a minute to wrap up. Red means stop. Hopefully at some point you will stop. If not, well, we've got a big gavel here that says stop, stop, stop. But be just respectful of everybody else, so get your points in and move on. With that, let me begin the introductions. Our first witness is Javier Sade, the Associate Administrator for the Office of Investment and Innovation at the SBA. As part of the SBA's senior leadership team, he leads the agency's SBIR and STTR programs, as well as a small business investment company. He came to SBA with 20 years of global general management, principal investing, strategic consulting, and entrepreneurial experience. Thank you for being here, and you begin your testimony for 5 minutes, Mr. Sade.
Thank you, Chairman. Ranking Member Velasquez, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for inviting me here today to discuss the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Programs. I would like to begin with an example. Biogen, now known as Biogen IDEC, used early SBIR funding to develop breakthroughs in cancer drugs, such as Rituxan, now the therapy of choice for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, as well as some types of leukemia and arthritis. Biogen's drugs have saved and improved the lives of millions around the world. This one company alone is worth $80 billion today. The wealth created by this only one company is more than double what the American taxpayers have invested in these programs since inception. To me, the SBIR program is personal because my dad, Jose, has been in remission for 6 years and owes his life to Rituxan, literally. The SBIR and STTR programs do more than just provide grants and contracts. These programs stimulate the STEM-driven economy as well as support people considering academic careers in a wide range of STEM fields. This is a critical pillar of our national competitiveness. The 11 agencies that participate in the programs, 2 of which are here today, have awarded over 145,000 grants totaling about $38 billion to American small businesses. In 2012, The SBIR and STTR programs provided about $2.5 billion directly into the hands of small businesses nationwide. And nearly a quarter of that money was awarded to women-owned, minority-owned, or hub-zone-located small businesses. The SBA's role in both of these programs is to provide programmatic and policy oversight on these programs. SBI works very closely with the agency program managers and external stakeholders to ensure that the intent of Congress is carried out in the operation of these programs. It must be noted that while there is only one SBIR program, it is operated 11 different ways depending on the focus of each agency's missions, directives, and goals. Thanks to this committee, the SBIR and STTR programs, as you noted, were reauthorized in January 1 of 2012. Annually, GAO conducts a series of reviews. At SBA, we take all these reviews very seriously. To address the recommendations of GAO, our agency has had ongoing discussions with agency program managers. Delegations from around the world, including Finland, Japan, Italy, UK, and India, among others, have visited our office to learn about these truly world-class innovation programs. These programs, in fact, make up the world's largest seed fund. While we are still the undisputed world leader in innovation, we're not alone. And many countries are making serious commitments of their own to their own innovation efforts. As we speak today, as an example, China is investing billions of dollars and millions of engineering hours in its own space program. We need to continue to invest in our future as other countries continue to catch up. To maximize the commercialization and worth of taxpayer investment, SBA is launching a commercialization database. This database will allow the private sector to easily search SBIR and STTR funded innovations and increase investment in the high-growth small businesses. iRobot, another amazing success story. This company created the Roomba vacuum cleaner, now a household name. This company received SBIR funding from DoD to develop robots that conduct dangerous missions, such as mine detection and explosive disposal, keeping our soldiers out of harm's way. What's interesting is that iRobot pivoted its military design technologies towards mainstream consumer needs and now has sales of over $500 million and employs 500 people. This is truly a remarkable example of an entrepreneur spotting a dual use for a technology developed for our nation's defense needs. SBIR and STTR are critical components of America's economic growth and are also key to advancing next-generation science, engineering, and technology. Job creation is a national goal. Job creation plus innovative research leads to global competitiveness. As SBA's Associate Administrator, I will continue to work closely with our sister agencies to make sure that the programs are top priorities across the federal government. I will hold agencies responsible for the allocations required by statute, and I will continue to work with all of you to improve these programs. They are true gems, and we must make sure that our small businesses know about these great opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Marie Mock. Is that right? The Acting Director in the Government Accountability Office's Acquisition and Sourcing Management Team. In her position, she leads a diverse portfolio addressing contracting issues, including ongoing reviews related to the Department of Defense's service contract limitations, subcontracting under construction contracts, and management of the International Space Station. She's been with the GAO since 2002. Appreciate her being here. You got 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chairman Lukemeyer, Ranking Member Velazquez, and members of the committee. Thank you for inviting me here today to discuss GAO's work on DoD's efforts to transition technologies developed through the SBIR program. My statement today will primarily focus on our SBIR report issued in December of last year. We reviewed the tools the military services use to support technology transition and assess the extent SBIR technologies were successfully transitioning to military users. There are two key topics from this review that I would like to highlight today. First, while DoD's SBIR program has developed technologies that support military users, comprehensive data on transition outcomes are lacking. Second, DoD has not established a plan for how and when it would be able to meet the 2012 congressional mandate to begin reporting the number of SBIR projects that transition. Let me start by saying that over the years, Congress and DoD have increasingly recognized the value of the SBIR program and have taken steps to improve opportunities for transitioning SBIR-developed technologies to military users. For example, the military services currently provide SBIR awardees additional funding to move certain projects closer to transition. They also have facilitators who work directly with small businesses and acquisition programs to foster transition commitments and support the progress of projects. As a result, there have been notable successes where SBIR technologies have transitioned to weapon systems or to direct use by the warfighter. These transition stories cover a broad range of technologies and products, but they are collected only on an ad hoc basis through voluntary submissions by program officials and small businesses. Comprehensive data about the nature and full extent of technology transition that is actually occurring is lacking, which is my first key topic I want to highlight today. DoD and the military services use two data systems to varying degrees to identify transition results: the company commercialization reports and the Federal Procurement Data System Next Generation. However, these systems have significant gaps in coverage and data reliability concerns that limit their use for capturing transition data. For example, while these systems do provide high-level commercialization information, such as some investments and contracting information associated with SBIR contracts, they weren't intended or even designed for capturing transition outcomes or detailed information on acquisition programs or fielded weapons systems. Without comprehensive data, we found that DoD is unable to meet the fiscal year 2012 congressional mandate to report the number and percentage of SBIR projects that transition to acquisition programs or fielded systems. At the time of our report, the Department was still assessing options for how to obtain better data and had not yet established a plan for how and when it would be able to do so, which is my second topic today. In our report, we recommended that DoD develop a plan to move forward with timelines and appropriate steps to address the data issues. We recognize there may be resource and technical challenges to collecting more comprehensive SBIR data, but we identified opportunities available for DoD to improve its tracking and reporting of transition outcomes. We found, for example, that the Navy has a potential best practice for assessing and documenting technology transition outcomes in its Future Naval Capabilities Program, a technology development effort separate from SBIR that the Department may be able to use on a broader scale. There may also be opportunities to use existing reporting mechanisms from acquisition programs. Furthermore, DoD could consider greater use of contracting provisions to require contractors to report on SBIR transition activities. Ultimately, however, the key to obtaining better data may require closer collaboration between SBIR and the acquisition communities within DoD. Incremental improvements may be possible to modify existing data systems and increasing SBIR program managers' capacity to track projects, but greater insights into transition outcomes and the benefits the technologies provide to military users may be better achieved with further involvement with the acquisition program managers, the users of those technologies. In an environment of declining budgets, it is important that data on technology transition outcomes for SBIR projects be improved for DoD to ensure that the right technologies transition to the right users in an economical and timely way. Chairman, Ranking Member, and members of the committee, this completes my prepared remarks. I would be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Mack. With that, our next witness is Andre Grudger, the Director of the Department of Defense Office of Small Business Programs. He serves as the Principal Advisor to the Secretary of Defense on small business-related matters. Mr. Grudger's career expands over 17 years in the defense, intelligence, and investment banking industries. He has been in his current position since 2011. Thank you for being here with us today. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Graves, Congressman Lukemeyer, and Ranking Member Velasquez. This is a great opportunity for us to talk about progress that the Department of Defense have made. And since the reauthorization, which had 41 provisions, which 34 of those applied directly, at all 34 of those as of today. And it's a news story for us because we have noticed an uptick in the participating in DoD programs. Never has the playing field been this level before, and we see that our number of new entrants have increased. We have 21% of every single solicitation that we put out in SBIR and STTR is a new entrant to the Department of Defense, which means every 5 solicitations we turn over our industrial base each time. And that shows our commitment to reaching out to states that don't participate or had not traditionally participated at a high level, to reaching out to them and getting them included in DoD acquisitions, and also looking at the greatness that we have with companies that are currently doing business with the Department of Defense. When we look at the numbers, which we've been collecting since 1983, we've been able to summarize that for every dollar invested in the Phase 1, $2 are invested at the Phase 3 level, commercialization. Out of every 4 awards we make in SBIR as Phase 1, one of those awards go to a Phase 3 commercialization, which is great news. When we look at our minority participation and our women-owned participation, in 2012, 14% of our SBIR awards went to women-owned small businesses. In 2012, 6% of our SBIR awards went to minority companies. Those are both higher than the congressionally mandated goal of 5%. So it's a hotbed for us. It's traditionally thought of that service-based professional services is a leading place for small businesses to do business with the Department of Defense. But this data shows us that small minority women-owned companies do innovate, and if we open the door and show them that the kind of things that the Department has as a priority, that they will participate in our solicitations and be very successful. So when I look at the overall health of the DoD SBIR program, we've seen tremendous improvement. We've taken a quantum leap in the right direction. Not only have we accelerated payments to small businesses, but we do targeted outreach now. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we open up, we talk the talk that innovative companies talk now. And that's led to great outcomes for us. We have an initiative that will lead to better outcomes in the department. We don't talk just innovation of technology, we talk the innovation of our people. And that's the reason why we made investments in improvements of our acquisition workforce, particularly our small business professionals. With that being said, I'd like to give back some time and answer any questions that you have for me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Dr. Portnoy, Director of the Division of Special Programs at the Office of Extramural Programs, as well as the National Institute of Health's SBIR STTR Program Coordinator. Most recently, Dr. Portnoy has worked at the National Institute of General Medical Sciences, both as a Program Director and as that program's SBIR STTR Program Coordinator. Dr. Portnoy came to NIH in 2001 as an intramural postdoctoral fellow at the National Human Genome Research Institute. Thank you for being here. You may begin your 5 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Luckmeyer, Ranking Member Velasquez, members of the committee. I'm Dr. Matt Portnoy, the Director for the Division of Special Programs within the Office of the Director at the National Institutes of Health, and the Coordinator for the SBIR and STTR programs at NIH. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the SBIR and STTR programs and our progress on the implementation of the Reauthorization Act. NIH is one of the largest funders of the program and the largest federal supporter of biomedical research. The SBIR and STTR programs continue to be critical to feeding the innovation pipeline that promises to deliver the medical advances of tomorrow and have complemented NIH's mission to advance science while bringing new healthcare solutions to the public. Examples of the types of research that NIH supports through the SBIR and STTR programs include drug discovery, drug and pharmaceutical development, medical devices, biosensors, nanotechnologies, and many other technologies that enhance health, lengthen life, and reduce illness and disability. Researcher-initiated ideas are the cornerstone of the NIH research portfolio, including projects supported by the SBIR and STTR programs. I'm proud to say that the implementation of many changes included in the Reauthorization Act are completed or nearly completed at NIH. In accordance with the law, the NIH increased its set-aside for SBIR and STTR to 2.8% and 0.4% respectively of its extramural budget in fiscal year 14. Since the reauthorization, the overall budget for the programs has increased from $680 million in fiscal 11 before the reauthorization to the current fiscal 14 set-aside of $758 million. Throughout, NIH and HHS have continued to meet and exceed the required set-asides each year, as stated in recent GAO reports. We have bolstered and diversified our outreach efforts and are partnering with the NIH Institutional Development Award, or IDEA program, as required to reach underserved small businesses in IDEA states, increasing outreach to women-owned and small disadvantaged businesses, collaborating with more state-based economic development centers to deliver a regular series of webinars and in-person outreach, educating entrepreneurs and small businesses new to the programs about the range of opportunities, and using social media to further engage small business. Fully one-third of our applicants and awardees are new to NIH each year and new to the program. And we believe we are reaching more future applicants and have more effective outreach strategies due to the provisions in the reauthorization. In February, NIH published a new funding opportunity announcement implementing the SBIR Direct Phase 2 pilot, allowing for the first time companies that have established scientific feasibility with non-SBIR and STTR support to bypass the need to apply for Phase 1 and compete for Phase 2 directly. We have received the first round of applications in April 2014 and expect to make first funding decisions in early fiscal 15. And we will be monitoring the impact of this pilot closely on our overall success rates. We are now also able to accept applications that switch programs from SBIR to SBIR and vice versa at the Phase 2 or Phase 2B level, which is our second sequential Phase 2. In 2013, NIH exercised the authority to allow small businesses that are majority owned by multiple venture capital companies to apply for SBIR funding. We received the first applications in late fiscal 13 and have made the first award this fiscal year. The NIH will soon be reducing the time it takes to award funding to our small businesses as required, an objective to which we are strongly committed. NIH is grateful for the support provided through the Administrative Fund Pilot Authority to enhance the management of the SBIR programs in new and more efficient ways. These funds, while currently temporary, have been critical so far in a number of areas across NIH to allow us to increase outreach, hire new staff to help with outreach, reporting, and improve our IT infrastructure for more efficient evaluation and management of our award portfolio. This includes our soon-to-be launched redesigned SBIR website, adding functionality to our performance outcome systems to now store commercialization data that will be linked to the new SBA commercialization database, and creating other resources for our program managers and the small business community, all of which would not have been possible without the additional funds under this pilot. We are eager to see the effects of these many changes in the coming years, and I would like to stress that NIH attributes the success and effectiveness of its programs to several factors, the most significant of which is a flexible and proactive approach that adapts to the changing nature of biomedical research. In conclusion, NIH SBIR projects are stories of discovery. We are committed to doing everything we can to ensure that the small businesses we fund today may become the Martechs, MedImmunes, and Abbotts of tomorrow. These companies, now household names, all received SBIR funding in their early stages and went on to create thousands of new jobs and deliver products that are making a real and significant impact on the lives and health of millions of people. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Portnoy. We have votes here in probably the next 20 to 30 minutes or so, so I'm going to defer my questions and we'll go immediately to Mr. Collins for his 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Portnoy, I'm kind of curious where you say, or at least allude to, a small business could apply for a SBIR grant outside of a solicitation from you. Is this in accordance with your mission? So help me understand, small biotech company has some idea somewhere that they think is novel, they want to get a grant, you don't have a solicitation. How would they go about that, and is that something, in fact, the NIH is looking for?
So thank you for the question, Representative Collins. In fact, everyone who applies to NIH, be it SBIR or any of our mechanisms, do apply to a solicitation. What I meant was that our standard omnibus SBIR solicitation is investigator-initiated, meaning they don't necessarily have to respond to one of the many topics we put out there that we're interested in. If a small business has a technology that is in the healthcare or public health space, they can apply to our omnibus solicitation, despite the fact that it's not in response to a specific topic. It will receive an external peer review and be considered for funding along with all of our other applications.
So how does the NIH decide, okay, this is the topic I'm looking for in this solicitation. The recent, like take for instance, the case where we just found that the CDC had live versions of, I'm not sure, it was the N5H1 and some other things where they thought they had been neutralized and they hadn't. Is that something that would catch the attention of the NIH and say, you know, maybe, I mean, clearly there must be ways of ensuring public safety outside of what transpired recently at the CDC labs?
So all of our program managers each and every year go through a process to determine what topics of interest to their institute and within the mission of their institute, and we collect those topics of interest, and they receive them from a variety of sources, be it workshops, from their own staff, also from looking through the literature and the technology space to determine what might be missing. And they put those topics together for us. That is not necessarily all-inclusive of what may be out there, but that's the process by which we go through developing topics.
And how easy is it for a small biotech company to find out that your solicitations are out there? How do they have to be looking into your website? Do you send things out? How do you advertise these and make these known throughout?
We do many different things, including all of the above. So we do post all of our solicitations on the NIH website, SBIR.nih.gov. We post them through the central NIH portal for all SBIR solicitations, the NIH Guide for Grants and Contracts. We post all of our SBIR solicitations. They're cross-posted on SBIR.gov, which is the central government SBA solicitation repository. In addition, we put out a variety of marketing through our 16,000-plus member listserv, our website, our Twitter feed, and all of our program managers take all of that and remarket through all of their channels. And so we reach as far as we possibly can.
Are these mostly Phase 1 solicitations?
Most of our solicitations are, in fact, a combination, and they accept Phase 1, Phase 2, and what we call Fast Track, which is a combination Phase 1 and 2 award designed to reduce the funding gap between 1 and 2. Some of our solicitations are Phase 1 only, some are Phase 2 only, but most accept Phase 1 and Phase 2.
Now, if it's a Phase 2 only, wouldn't a company have had to already do a Phase 1?
That's right. So we have that's a little bit separate from the new direct Phase 2, which I can address in a moment. But our solicitations, when they accept regular Phase 2s, the company can have received the Phase 1 from either NIH or any other federal agency and apply to one of our Phase 2 solicitations if they're proposing work that is within the mission of NIH. Separately, we have a new direct Phase 2 pilot where the companies must have established the Phase 1 equivalent feasibility on their own without SBIR support, and then they can apply for the direct Phase 2.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. With that, we'll go to the ranking member, Ms. Velasquez, for 5 minutes.
I will defer to my members.
Okay. Mr. Barber for 5 minutes. From Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Velasquez, for the yielding. Thank you all for coming. I come from southern Arizona, border district with Mexico, and it's an area where small businesses, particularly in the high-tech optics, solar industry, are just beginning to thrive, actually. And the importance of SBIR and STTR programs are critical to not only what we've done so far, but also to continued growth. I think it's pretty clear, at least to me, from my vantage point, that SBIR and STTR programs are some of the most effective programs we've got in the federal government for spurring innovative ideas and job creation. We have globally competitive businesses that have benefited from these programs, both startups and new companies that have expanded, developing new commercialization of groundbreaking technologies. For example, the University of Arizona is partnering with small businesses to develop and commercialize new technologies as a part of the small University of Arizona, Southern Arizona SBIR STTR competitiveness initiative. And a good example of that is Avery Therapeutics, which is developing a new therapy to treat heart failure. The University of Arizona is helping the company with an NIH Phase 1 STTR proposal, as well as helping design appropriate proof of concept experiments to test the safety and efficacy of the therapy, and build small business leadership team and develop long-term commercialization plans. This is essentially a part of what the programs that you represent or have spoken about can do for a community. So let me turn to you, Mr. Sadeh. I'd like to pronounce that correctly?
It's close enough.
Okay. For a question about what you're responsible for, I want to thank you, of course, for being here. And in your testimony, you touched on the commercialization component of these programs. While a small part of SBIR and STTR commercialization makes the most of these investments for the Federal Government and our small businesses, could you talk about how successful these efforts have been in using the current allowed set-asides, and how we can better improve or maximize commercialization for small businesses moving forward, particularly with regard to the set-asides?
So, as you know very well, the commercialization aspect of the program is actually one of the main tenets of the program, and the reason why it sits in the agency and then within your purview is because this is not only about advancing the frontiers of human knowledge, which is great. It's about creating companies around those. So different agencies do different things to get their products and their research commercialized. And the reason they do different things, obviously, is because the path to commercialization is different. And you have two examples here where, in the case of defense, at the end of the commercialization road, it's basically defense. It's a single customer at the end of that road that it becomes that technology becomes creates other uses and so on and so forth is a different story. NIH, for example, clearly not a sole customer at the end of the road. It's not a contract that the SBIR recipient gets to commercialize. So there are things that could be better done, and one of the best examples as to what at SBA, at least from having a purview of the overall program, is finding best practices. And one of the things we're looking at is something NSF does to commercialize, to get the scientists that participate in the programs to have a commercial mindset from day one. And the reason is that for the most part, most PhDs are extremely, extremely good at research, but sometimes they don't think about the business side. So NSF implemented with great success something called iCorp, Innovation Corps. And it's one of the ways in which we can, across agencies, and we're looking at how to do that, begin to export some of these best practices, one of which is iCorps, one of which enables scientists to begin their research always with a commercial purpose in mind. And NSF has been greatly successful. And right now, NIH actually is looking at figuring out how to implement iCorp in their areas.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm almost out of time, so I'll yield back. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we go to the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Kaufman, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Mack, are there ways to enhance existing data systems such as the company commercialization reports or federal procurement data systems to enable more comprehensive tracking and reporting of technology transition in the Department of Defense small business innovation research program?
Thank you, sir, for the question. Systems can only take you so far, and like I said earlier, we do believe that the systems were not intended to design for tracking outcomes and then not for tracking for the acquisition programs, detailed information. So I tend to believe there's good practices that we can consider that would feed into the system, such as increased training of the contractors, what is supposed to be reported, and really it's a partnership to improve technology transition and commercialization with DoD. We really see it as a partnership between SBIR offices and acquisition office. It's a push-pull. SBIR, does the pushing, and the acquisition office does the pulling. So there are more advantages that they can consider for SBIR considerations, such as the acquisition strategy, the planning, the milestone reviews, different phases of the acquisition process where there could be more implementation of SBIR considerations into the process.
Thank you. Mr. Gudger, what level or rate of technology transition success should be expected from the Department of Defense Small Business Innovation Research Program?
Well, that's a great question. Department of Defense is big and massive, and that answer will probably vary depending on the military component or defense agency. But on average, we see 25% of the investments Department of Defense make go to commercialization, whether it's industry or DoD. So I think it's a very healthy number.
Okay.
And I anticipate that still being the track and trend that we're on.
Good. Dr. Portnoy, about how many of, in the National Institute of Health, the Small Business Innovation Research Awards utilize the waiver for surpassing the statutorily defined award sizes? And do you have evidence or studies that show that larger SBIR awards result in more innovation and better commercialization?
Thank you for the question, Representative Kaufman. In terms of the percentage of awards that we make over the statutory hard caps, historically, before the reauthorization, we were at around 20 to 27% of our portion of our awards were over the hard cap, and we, in light of the new reauthorization and the waivers, we don't anticipate that to change very much. In terms of your second question about, excuse me, could you repeat the question?
Do you have evidence and or studies that show that larger SBIR awards result in more innovation and better commercialization?
Yes, thank you. So we have the 2008 or 9 Academy study that bolstered the size of our awards. In addition, we're asking the academies again in the current study to look at that. And we have our own data in terms of how the size of awards is important for making sure technology gets supported with SBIR to the point where it's being able to be picked up by the next investor. Biomedical research is very expensive, and SBIR typically only is involved in the first 5 to 10% of the overall investment before technology gets to the market. And so we strive to fund research at an appropriate level so that a venture capital company, angel investor, strategic partner, pharmaceutical may pick it up at the appropriate point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. With that, we'll go to the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Schrader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. I guess, Mr. Sade, what are the outcome measures that the agency is using for SBIR and STTR with the different players that we've got here?
So one of the things we look at, which was actually embedded in the law, is the rate, and this has been brought up a couple of times, is the rate at which Phase 1 become Phase 2s and at which Phase 2s become Phase 3s, which is really commercialization. So what's in there is 25%. So the goal is for across the program for 1 out of 4 SBIR Phase 1 awards to get Phase 2 awards. Basically goes to the premise of the program that you're taking probably a little more risk in the very, very early stages of the Phase 1, and you're hoping that at least 1 in 4 make it to Phase 2. On the Phase 2 to Phase 3, there's 2 ways to kind of measure it. One is how much outside investment is, and by outside investment, I mean not the taxpayer footing the bill, but an investment firm. It could be a company. It could be a bigger small business. And the target there is that for every 7 awards, and I have to check on these numbers, but it's something about this, and I'll get back to you with the exact numbers, but it's something like every 7 awards attracting for every 7 awards, 1 patent. Because if the patent is available, the likelihood that the technology will get to market is more likely because there's intellectual property. And the other one has to do with how much outside investment. And I actually don't recall exactly, but it's like $100,000 for every Phase 2 award. But I have to check on that.
So basically 3 major outcomes that you're looking for with the SBIR STTR program.
There are there are a few milestones like the ones I mentioned, but we also, because we have the purview, obviously, of the program across the agencies, there are definitely some best practices. And one of the best practices I mentioned before, which is sort of on the front end of a phase one, basically you're making scientists go through essentially what is an MBA 101. And the reason for that is that the theory goes that, or in practical terms, if the researcher and investigator is thinking about what the market segments are going to be for their technology, how they're going to fund it, who are they going to sell it to, MBA 101 type stuff, then the likelihood of that becoming a commercial success is higher. It's logic. So because NSF has been very successful at this, even though there's no hard numbers yet, but it costs nothing because essentially you're making the scientists go through this as part of the program, why not blow it out across? So there's some nuggets of interesting best practices that could be used, yeah.
Okay. Director Mack, you talked about not a lot of outcomes, or at least not insufficient, it might be a harsh word, outcomes in some of the DoD programs, and yet Director Gudger talked about certain outcomes that that sounded reasonable, sounded decent. Could you juxtapose the two conversations for us?
I definitely agree. There are success stories. There are numerous outcomes, but it's a matter of getting comprehensive data to really know to what extent, how many successes are you really having versus just what you can get with the existing systems. So, but there are models that are within the department that we have found in our work that are very, very effective. Like I mentioned, the Future Naval Capabilities Program, they have a transition review board that regularly reviews their investments, tracks the outcomes, and uses that information to make future investment decisions. Also, SBIR specific, the Program Executive Office for Submarines has been noted for years for actively supporting the SBIR technologies, tracking the outcomes, included in their program planning, milestone reviews, and offering contracting incentive programs.
I've got limited time. I apologize for interrupting. But so, in other words, you're talking about filling in the blanks. In other words, so all the programs are consistent.
All the programs are considered and a baseline.
Director Gudger has given a good example of what the department overall, but not necessarily the micro into each of the different program areas.
Absolutely.
That will help us. The request I'd make as my time expires, be interesting to see, for me, I'm just a businessman, but like over the last 10 years, what the trend line has been in the SBIR, maybe STTR programs for the different agencies that get the money or they're supposed to be doing the granting to the different companies, see what the trend line's been, just in the different outcome areas that the administrator talked about. That'd really help me get a picture of how we're doing. Might take into account the fact we've had a recession, I get that, or money that's been allocated or not allocated to make the program hopefully as successful as it could be. But if I get trend lines from the different agencies, that would be really helpful, if I could ask that, Mr. Chairman, going forward.
Very good.
Thank you.
Will do. Thank you. With that, gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Tipton, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, panel, for taking the time to be here. Mr. Gudger, and this is follow-up perhaps a little bit on Mr. Schrader's question. You may be able to give us some insight in regards to some of the trending. In 2012 reauthorization bill, the Department of Defense was authorized to be able to establish goals to be able to increase the SBIR's technology transition and to be able to use some incentives, I believe, to encourage prime contractors to be able to meet the goal. Has the DoD implemented these policies, and could you maybe enlighten us a little bit on some of the incentives that were used as well?
Absolutely. I've been waiting for this question all day. So
that's what I was here for.
Yeah, this is so. And it's a healthy thought. So there are things in FY11. I presented a plan to the House Armed Services in collaboration with the House Small Business Committee, and I laid out this plan about increasing small business participation in DoD with a particular focus on technology firms, which meant SBIR, STTR. I wanted to increase commercialization, and in that plan, what we did was look at the acquisition framework. Make no mistake about it, the SBIR, STTR programs are within the acquisition community. And so they work hand in hand and close already. And in that plan, it was 8 actionable items. One of them is a monthly meeting between myself, hosted by the Undersecretary for Acquisition Technology and Logistics, and the service acquisition executives, in which these technology programs report up to. So that became a best practice. We do that DoD-wide. And that led to the stand-up of our SBIR PEO, which is led by Chris Rinaldi, who's here in the room. That PEO has a specific focus on commercialization, and it's a member, and it works with a pre-defense acquisition board, so all the DABs and on the DABs. All my small business directors now sit on ACSTRATs and peer reviews of anything above $500 million. And we look at how do we get small business participation across the board into these major defense programs, ACAT and above. And that's led to a great outcome. And going to Congressman Schrader's point, I have the 2010 2003 data all the way through 2013. And I look at the commercialization number. We were at $3.5 billion aggregate over time. And just to show you the focus and the results, it goes down to dollars. And we have commercialized $13.5 billion aggregate over a 10-year period. That's significant for small business. And we track that data. And we have a system that is the model. In fact, we work with SBA. They come and look at our system. They like it. It's a great model. I'm very familiar with all the military departments and how they bring their data together. And they do that in a decentralized way. They make the systems that meet the need for the department, and we bring it in together, and we provide that report annually. And so I think that we've done the right thing. We have a commercialization working group that has the members are the S&T executives from the defense agencies and research and engineering and at the OSD level, and it includes all the directors of small business. So this collaboration happens. We're using technology better, and we're looking to put hooks into the publicly available databases like FPDS and ESRS that was referred to earlier. Yes, they were not designed originally to collect this kind of information, but there's a however part. In FY13 and the NDAA and the authorization language I actually supported and pushed for was for us to work with SBA, GSA, and the members of DOD. And we did that. It was a Tiger team stood up with members from my office, our Procurement and Acquisition Policy Office, the contracting folks, GSA and SBA, and that team looked at the systems and made recommendations on how to improve them. And we want to roll out those recommendations. At the time, we were in the middle of a continuing resolution, so there was limited new starts that we could do, and that would be considered one. But that is an area of focus for in 14 and 15 to make improvements to the technology systems and take the best practices we have in our system that we collect, that data that I can refer to, I have it. And I want to make it available to those public systems. But right now, we provide that to the SBA.
Okay, well, thank you. Mr. Sadate, how many agencies have utilized the authority given to them under Section 5123 to reauthorization law and requested to establish a commercialization readiness pilot program?
11 agencies participate in the SBIR program, and that's driven by how much of the research budget is extramural budget is X. And 5 agencies participate in the STTR program, so 11 and 5. It's 2 different numbers for both programs.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time's expired. I yield back.
Thank you. With that, I'll go to the ranking member, Ms. Velasquez, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Gudger, I would like to know if your agency have conducted any training in terms of your DoD SBIR personnel regarding the new procedures put in place by the reauthorization statute.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess that your staff briefed you regarding the first oversight committee that we held, hearing that we held in this committee, since you were coming to testify regarding SBIR and STTR. Were you?
I was definitely briefed.
Okay. So you heard that some companies complain about the fact that DoD personnel complain about having to execute a small business welfare program and that they deny submission of Phase 2 proposals from Phase 1 awardees when they do not have the authority. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I'm not aware of that, and if I was made aware of that, I open door policy. I'll give my email address. Send me an email and tell me who said that and why they said that, and I'll pay a personal visit to them. Well, because we are focused in capability and technology superiority in the Department of Defense. That is our future. It's protecting the young men and women. So that means that we have to have Phase 2 and Phase 3 programs in the Department of Defense in order to be successful. So I'm not aware of anyone saying they haven't done it or not going to do it.
Well, I just want to make sure that you were briefed regarding those complaints that were shared with us during our committee hearing. The reauthorization legislation made permanent the DoD commercialization program and created a similar pilot program to civilian agencies. This program diverts funds from Phase 1 and Phase 2 awards and relocate them to commercialization efforts. Given that GAO has found DoD lacks of data of commercialization, how are you measuring success?
Well, I do not concur with GAO's report. I think it's factually inaccurate. However, we measure success of SBIR by the percentage of commercialization. SBA set those rules and define them, and we adhere.
Ms. Mack, would you please comment on Mr. Godger's characterization?
Yes, thank you. I think they do track some outcomes, but it's one of those where it's not extensive enough. The existing systems, the company commercialization reports, and the federal procurement data systems that they use to get the numbers, there's reliability issues when it comes to tracking outcomes, and we found that in our work. We also found what you mentioned earlier, that there is not a complete awareness of the SBIR program throughout all the acquisition communities that are impacted, and therefore there could be more improvements in those particular areas. And when we talk about databases, we're talking the extent of how successful. We won't, I won't disagree. They are successful, but until we know what the baseline is, how are they going to report how effective those programs are overall? Until you have a number that sets that baseline, it's really kind of difficult to determine.
Ms. Mack, according to data on SBIR.gov, from 1996 to 2013, women-owned firms' share of SBIR awards by value decreased from 9.8% to 6.4%, a decline of 35%. In the same period, award shares for minority-owned firms fell from 8.3% into 2.6%, a decline of 70%. This happened at a time when women-owned firms grew by 59%, about 1.5 times the national average. And according to one study, women-owned firms are exceeding overall sector growth in 8 of the 13 most populous industries. It looks like in the area of research and innovation, that doesn't hold water. Why is that discrepancy?
I really can't comment on that because we did not do work focused on that area, but I do feel like that Congress has made a lot of good provisions, established clear policies of maximizing small business contracting opportunities for women and minorities. So I can't say much more than that regarding this.
Okay. Ms. Mack, according to data from, well, I believe that this will be the same answer to my question. I would like to ask to Mr. Sarit. In May of last year, SBA published guidance on benchmarks for Phase 1 to Phase 2 transitions. The goal of these benchmarks is to prevent the same company from continually winning Phase 1 awards without progressing to Phase 2. Are agencies enforcing these benchmarks? And if so, Have there been any cases where a company was made ineligible for the year?
So yeah, I alluded to this a little bit earlier. The progress to phase 2 from phase 1 and the progress to phase 3 from phase 2, respectively, there's a minimum benchmark of 25%, so 1 in 4, phase 1 to phase 2. And in terms of phase 2 to phase 3, if a company has gotten a phase 2 in the last 10 years, they must have one of two things: either an investment or sales of at least $100,000, which indicates commercial success, or a 1 in 7 conversion into intellectual property and IP. One of the things that I think is going to help us and the committee look at the success of this is to have one place in which basically houses the commercialization data across the SBIR program. And that's something that we're hoping to have live very soon. And it'll be basically a repository of data which is going to give us that baseline that Acting Director Mack was talking about. Also enables ease and efficiency of use for the sectors to commercialize that data. So, yeah.
Okay, so my question is, SBA is tracking and compiling data on firms that are not meeting these benchmarks. You are doing that?
We are compiling data.
Okay. Mr. Portnoy, you state in your testimony that the current demand for NHI awards from venture-backed companies is low. Why do you believe that this is the case?
So, as I said in my written testimony, at the moment, there is not a high demand for the venture capital backed provision in our solicitation. It is in all of our SBIR solicitations since the middle of 2013 when we implemented. I don't know if I don't think there's any one reason, and I just think a variety of reasons in no particular order. Might be that the provision is new. It takes time for companies, we are doing extensive outreach on that provision, but it takes time for companies to decide to go after SBIR when they haven't, and to build up the resources and the capability to put in applications. It's also possible that with the new direct phase 2 provision, this might be more attractive for venture capital-backed companies to apply as opposed to the phase 1 route. But at the moment, it's too early to know. We are tracking it, and we will see what happens over time.
Under the reauthorization, VC-backed companies must register with the SBA and also note their funding structure in the SBIR program application. Do you think that these requirements serve as a deterrent for VC participation?
I don't believe so. They're required in the SBA company registry to put the ownership, the rough ownership structure of the company, what percentage they have owned by multiple venture capital companies, et cetera. And that is used solely for determining eligibility, whether they fall into the VC eligibility criteria or not. It's not used in any way other than that for just determine eligibility, which pool they get paid from.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got just a few questions, and then looks like we're getting ready to call votes here in a minute, and I think Mr. Payne will be able to ask a few whenever he gets settled here as well. Mr. Sadeh, across agencies, we've already kind of asked this question a little bit, but I want to take a little bit different tact on it. Across agencies, what's being done to improve data collection and dissemination? So, you know, it's important with the reauthorization that's required. It's required a lot more reporting to you at the SBA and to us here in Congress. This is crucial for us to engage in future reauthorization activities. And so, I guess the question really is, what are you doing to improve the data collection? I know you've talked about it, but what are you doing to improve the cross agencies?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So, one of the things in which we play a big role is to ensure that as much of the of the mandates and the statute as dictated by the reauthorization are done consistently across the agencies. So one of the things that was born out of that was 5 groups which are composed of different and varied program managers from different agencies. One which is solely focused on commercialization and outreach. Another one which is focused on asset mapping. Asset mapping meaning the federal government owns billions of dollars of buildings and equipment that are available for use for small businesses. We're trying to figure out where they are so that small businesses can use them. And several other groups. So one of the roles that we are playing, and the agencies and the program managers are participating in a great way, is to have this cross-pollination and cross-collaboration between agencies across 5 very specific groups which are intended to corral what the intent of the new authorization was, one of which is the standardization of data collection. And there's 2 things to that I just want to add. One is the data collection of the inbound, which is what allows us to see how many women or minorities are applying, because one of the reasons why potentially women and minority awards are down is because they're applying less. That's a different problem than them not getting them. So that's on one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum is if we make the data surrounding the technologies that have been funded by the taxpayer easy to search, you would think that it would be that more private investment dollars are attracted. So that's kind of data from both ends.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Gudger, what progress has been made in implementing the transition reporting requirements required by the law? Has a plan been developed as GAO recommended to address the requirements? If so, how and when will improvements be made in the tracking and reporting of technology transition outcomes?
Thank you. That's a great question. And yes, we're already tracking them and reporting them. The genesis of what GAO found wasn't necessarily us collecting the comprehensive data as much as it was the validation of that data. And some of the challenges we have in validation of the data is most of the companies that are moving into into programs of record are typically subcontractors. And we've been bound by the self-reporting allowances of the law, not DoD policy, but inside of the comprehensive subcontracting test program, it allows for large companies to self-report, and it's very difficult to validate that data. And we had a ripe opportunity here to let that program expire and have transparent reporting into the system that we can validate. That's behind us a little bit, but yes, what we've done in DoD to further implement what we were doing is we updated our DoD 5000, which is our acquisition framework documentation. It's full of transition reporting, incentives. We've updated our defense acquisition guidance, which goes to our field, our program managers, and our contracting officers. In addition to that, the Secretary of Defense, for the first time in history in 2012, included a small business innovation research and technology transfer, STTR, into the framework of the defense planning guidance, and that was directly to the chairman of Joint Chiefs and Joint Staff, the Secretary of the Military Departments, and the Director of Defense Agencies to report on transitioning SBIR technologies into their programs. And our Defense Contract Management Organization office tracks that. And we get our office get an annual report on that, and 100% of them are compliant in FY14.
100%, wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
They all report it.
Perfect. Mr. Portnoy, you've kind of answered a little bit about this, but also these 2 gentlemen have talked about, or we asked them with regards to the reporting requirements, so we don't leave you out of the questioning here. I know that you're monitoring the extra reporting requirements of SBIR applicants as well, especially those that are majority venture-backed. What's the National Institute of Health doing to help ensure that these requirements are not overly burdensome and prohibitive to majority venture-backed small companies?
Well, I think Mr. Sade emphasized it quite well in that SBA is developing central data systems so that the burden is less on all of our awardees, including venture-backed. So SBA is about to launch a commercialization database. They already have an award database and a registry, and so we will be requiring, through the policy directive and SBA, all of our awardees to report their outcomes in the central SBA database.
Not to interrupt, just a question follow-up here. Do you ever get feedback from the applicants themselves about whether the application process is burdensome or not, whether the amount of information, the constant rules and regulations, do they ever give you any feedback and say, this is just right, or this isn't enough, or this is way too much?
Well, I don't believe they ever tell us that it's too little. But we do get feedback, and we have to, of course, follow all of the rules within the policy directive and the law, follow all of our own regulations in terms of collecting what we need in an application to ensure a fair and unbiased review.
So we cleared up that half of the spectrum. What about the other half of the spectrum? Do you get complaints from the applicants about how burdensome it is, how much it costs to comply, how much time it takes?
We don't get complaints about time or cost. There are a lot of forms to apply for any type of federal funding, and that's to ensure that the funds are spent and used appropriately.
Very good. Thank you. With that, Mr. Payne, if you're ready, why, you've got 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's see, I was ready. I had a question for Mr. Grudger. I understand the department, that the Department of Defense uses multiple outreach methods to increase the participation of women in minority-owned businesses. Do you find that this outreach has been effective?
Yes. What we see, we actually have very healthy numbers in the women and minority areas for SBIR and STTR. When we look at our minority-owned participation in SBIR, that's 6%. The federal goal is 5%.
6, you said?
Yes, 6.
Okay.
It's greater than the goal. And in women, it's 14%, which also is greater than the 5% goal. So we have a healthy mix of women and minorities now participating in SBIR and STTR.
Maybe the goal should be raised.
Well, I talked to SBA on that.
But earlier you mentioned that you said that the numbers were down. No, the associate administrator. Did you mention that the minority outreach and the goals were down? No. Oh, good. Okay. Also, in 2011, reauthorization allows for up to 3% of small business innovation research funds to be used for program management and administration purposes, including outreach. Is the Department of Defense using the full 3% available? And what has this additional funding allowed the DoD to do that if it would not have been available otherwise?
So yes, we do use a portion of the 3% in administering the SBIR program. It's a $1 billion program for us, so we use a small percentage of that to do the administration. It's very complex. But I have a posture that we need to be slim and trim and be innovative with our outreach. We need to use technology where available. And we should use those additional administrative funds where appropriate to help small business commercialize their technologies. So for us, we use a significant portion, maybe 1.5% in the administration, which is very helpful. Thank you for that. And the other half goes into directly back to small businesses, which is where it belongs.
Okay. Oh, and in the interest of time, Mr. Chair, I'll yield back.
Thank you. With that, I would like to thank the witnesses for being with us today. The SBIR Reauthorization Act was signed into law 31 months ago. That law instructed participating agencies to improve their data collection, focus more on the commercialization of SBIR technologies, and set goals for inclusion of those technologies in larger programs. Agency compliance thus far seems to have been a mixed bag. By and large, SBIR and STTR programs are performing very well, but we can always do better. Agencies need to continue to be partners with us here in Congress to increase participation, commercialization, and provide American taxpayers with the greatest return on their investment. This committee will continue to follow the progress of the agencies implementing these changes and hope to see better results in the coming months. I ask unanimous consent that members have 5 legislative days to submit statements and supporting materials for the record. Without objection, so ordered. This hearing is now adjourned.